Hey fam, it's the Better Man podcast. We are helping men win. Speaking of winning, I want to talk about our two partners, our two sponsors that help make this show go. One is Aroga Drive. When I'm looking for day in and day out energy to keep this motor going, Aroga Drive is the one. Check them out at arogadrive.com/BetterMan. It's in the show notes. And then also our guys at Art of Homage, engaging culture in a winsome, and I'm going to tell you, a strong vibe.
Courage, I think, to me would be willingness to act in accordance to what you believe in the face of fear. For a lot of my life, I was really afraid. And I think probably a year or two ago, I realized that, oh, maybe you can't really have a lot of courage unless you have that fear.
Better Man fam, welcome to the Better Man podcast. As always, I'm here with my man D. D, how we living today?
I'm living good, Harp. It's August. School has started.
Come on.
High school football in Texas is about to start.
Come on. And you got a son playing QB.
I do. I got a ninth grade boy who's playing backup QB,
Yeah.
freshman.
And you got a middle school son playing too.
I got a middle school son playing linebacker, and all he wants to do is hit, including me.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Life is good, man.
Malachi's hyped about, I mean, he's in the 5th grade, so he's got one more year before it gets into tackle.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just, boy, chomping at the bit.
Yeah, and Malachi's a killer, man.
Chomping
He's
at the
Harp's
bit.
son.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man. I'm so excited about today's show. Every now and then we'll come across something that's unique, something that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of or don't know about. But the cause and the messaging is so good. And some months back, I came across Austin, and I came across his organization, The World Needs Good Men. Direct to the point. Austin, we're so happy to have you on the show today, man, and talking about the fact that the world needs good men. So tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us where this came from.
Oh, sure. Well, thanks for having me on. Well, you're kind to call it an organization. Really, at the end, I think it's just me, my wife, and my 3 boys. But yeah, we live in Dallas, have been for a while. Boys are 8, 6, and 3.
Wow. And
I think really this kind of came out of something I maybe saw in my own life that I desired, and something that I desired for my boys, that I was very risk averse.
Okay.
And I think in some of the reading I was doing, came across something from Desiring God in the book, Don't Waste Your Life. And it would talk about hey, when was the last time someone asked you about the hope that you have in Christ? And I was like, oh gosh, it's never. And it's well, maybe I'm not that different from the normal non-Christian, everyday good person who gives money to charity. And I think through a lot of soul searching, ultimately kind of came to there's a lot of things I could know, but if I'm not willing to risk some things for a greater cause, then I would be a little disappointed in my life looking back. And so this kind of came out of, I think something I was trying to encourage in myself was just to take more risks for a greater cause. And tactically, we had bought our boys all sorts of swords. I mean, single piece wooden swords, foam swords, plastic swords. We actually had a metal sword, and it was 4 feet long, and they broke that one too. But we eventually came across one that had this kind of skateboard plywood level material, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta make some things out of these. And it's hits them right before they get into all the additional influences of school and more content, but they're still young enough to be able to hold that adventure and hopefully get a little flame going in their life that hey, there are some things in life worth me going into battle for, even if it costs me something personally.
I love that, man. What a good message that not just young men, all men need to hear today. I'm convicted just listening to you talk. I know exactly the John Piper book you're talking about, and that question: when is the last time anybody asked you, the hope, the reason for the hope that you have? When is the last time anybody asked you, what is it that's different about you? And I remember Russell Moore was being interviewed by CNN one time. He was the president of the CL or ERLC, whatever the acronym is. But they were talking to him about traditional marriage and the Southern Baptist view of traditional marriage, and basically telling him that it was archaic, that it was weird that the Southern Baptist Convention still held to a traditional view of marriage. And I'll never forget, he started laughing, and he said to the young lady interviewing him, he said, "Young lady, that's the least weird thing we believe." We actually believe a previously dead guy's coming back to rescue us all. like it's that Christianity is a little weird. Like it should be. It should have its own flavor. Like there should be something appealing about the King we follow, what we believe, and I love how you highlight that yeah, man, we should be a little probably a little riskier with our lives and with our faith. It's so good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask you a question, man. So where did this idea come from, or this thought, right? Like, man, I want to take more risk, and this is something that I want to pass down to my boys to be risk takers.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it came from some self-searching that, like, hey, what do I truly believe? That, like, if am I scared to tell people about the hope that I have in Jesus? And if so, then maybe I'm overweighting their opinions and feelings more so than what I think is kind and loving to them. But at the end of my life, I want to be able to look back and make sure it counts. Right. And I want to make sure that it counts in the areas that matter. And my hope is that at the end, I've looked back and I can see that I've won some souls of the Lord. And I'm not really confident that me just consuming a lot of material and trying to be a good person in isolation is the right way or the best way for me to go about that. And you look at other religions and you see people very much dying for their spiritual convictions. And I think generally, and maybe I'm not exposed to the right circles of the world, but you don't really see that in Christian circles. And maybe I'm not exposed to the right circles, but I am trying to push myself to be as aggressive as I can in the situations that I'm in, to take the opportunities that I have in front of me, to be able to hopefully nudge some souls a little closer to the Lord. Yeah. With my boys specifically, I think time is of the essence. They were 5, I think, when we started this a couple years ago, or 1 or 2 years ago. And then whether or not we backed into the logic or came up with it on the front end, but as they get older, the competition for their mind and their souls is only going to go up, and their time with me is only going to go down. And that if I can make that investment earlier to kind of course correct or do what I can to adjust the compass of their heart for their life, when there's less competition, it's going to be easier for me, and there's going to be a greater impact further down the road. Yeah. And so, I hope they leave our home able to kind of like self-assess and course correct the things they believe in their own souls. But I also hope that they leave with an understanding and willingness that there are some things that they're going to need to risk some things for. Yeah. I had a friend who was, it was a great story. He was in the church, had been in the church a long time, was considering moving, I think, over to the Middle East. And he talked to 2 sets of people. One group were the people who were very much non-believers. And they're like, oh yeah, you should totally do it. Like, go for it. Like trust what you think you need to go and do. And all the Christians were the ones like, oh, well, no. Are you sure? Like, are you sure you should do that? That sounds dangerous. Right. And you would think that would maybe be the opposite, that if you did truly believe the things that were in the Bible, that you'd be willing to go to lengths and take risks that people who didn't necessarily have those beliefs would be willing to take. And then I think the last thing is just, if I was a pastor, which I'm not a pastor, But if I was a pastor and looking in the book of Acts and the disciples and everything that was happening, they were not well-trained people. There were not courses for them to go through, certifications to get. They were literally just falling over their faces, moving forward, empowered by the Holy Spirit. And that I would imagine that if I was a pastor, I would hope that the people that I was investing in would be, I would rather them be just absolutely on fire, trying to get the good word out and win some souls to the Lord and completely failing doing so, more so than being scared, sensitive, wanting to get another course, another certification before in 30 years they maybe timidly, share the good news of the Lord with someone.
Yeah. So. We call that analysis paralysis.
Okay, there you go, yeah.
Where you sit back and analyze as you're paralyzed, then you do nothing. Mm-hmm. But I like what you said as you share with your boys. It's like a Frederick Douglass quote that said, it's easier to build strong boys than to repair broken men.
Okay.
And so that's the quote that I think about. And I love the name, The World Needs Good Men.
Yes, sir.
Austin and I were talking a little bit earlier, and we both agreed, just like the name for BetterMan, right? The world needs strong men, needs good men. Mm-hmm. Even bad men would agree with that statement.
Yes, sir.
Or even people who were non-believers would agree with that statement. Is there any reason why, this statement was so important to you, or for the naming of it?
Sure, yeah, that's it. Well, thanks for asking. That's a great question. Well, one, I think I couldn't think of anything better for it. and if I had tried to come up with some esoteric word, I would have then just had to do a bunch of work to try to explain what it is.
Right.
But one thing I do like about it, it's not the world needs great men or the world needs amazing men, but because I think there's enough be more, do more, go achieve amazing things, hockey stick your company, go above them, and so the good just felt maybe not much more attainable, but I actually felt a little more rare. That when I think about what makes a good man, there are probably less than 5 or so people in my life that I've looked at kind of in awe and been like, man, that is a good man. He puts others in front of himself. He has sacrificed for the service and love of others. And and that's the hope of the character that this helps get people towards. And, the world needs good men. If you go on the website, you're not going to find a ton of Bible verses, or I don't even think the word God is mentioned on the website, because my hope is that hey, everyone can, I think you said, everyone can look at that and be yeah, yeah. No one's going to turn, I don't think anyone would look at the world and be yeah, we need more bad men. Yeah. There's plenty of that in the media, but the world needs good men. It's easy to at least start saying yes. Yeah. And then, and then who doesn't want to buy a sword, or who doesn't want to run around with a sword and do cool stuff? Anyway, yeah.
There was a.
Go ahead, D. Go ahead.
No, it was just a story that came out in the news. I think it was about a year ago, at a high school in Shreveport, Louisiana, and there was so much. I don't know if it was crime as much as it was fighting on a daily basis. Kids were getting put out of school, and there were fights taking place all the time. And so you just had a few dads stand up and say, "We're just going to bring a presence to the school," and dads begin to show up every morning. They didn't do anything extra. They just begin to show up. They begin to be there. And all the fighting ceased.
I did, really?
All of the issues ceased. It was crazy. I mean, the story went national. It probably may have gone international. Okay. But just because regular men stood up and decided to be good men, and their presence was enough for all of that to stop. Yeah.
And I think that's why, I think it's what drew me to you, Austin, is just the like-heartedness between what you're doing, what BetterMan's doing. It's why we call BetterMan BetterMan.
Yeah, not perfect man.
That's right. That's right. And it's, who doesn't want to be a better man or need to be a better man? And it's the simplicity, it's the clarity. We say all the time around the office, men today need 2 things. They need clarity and the community of other men. Clarity and community. And BetterMan, we've never lauded BetterMan as deep discipleship. Same point. You get into our curriculum and we don't even get to the gospel until week 5, week 6, right? It's not deep discipleship. It is the starting block. It is the on-ramp for God's design for manhood and masculinity. And we've done it like that because we wanted it to be we want it to replicate. We want it to multiply, right? I had a church reach out, and they had started BetterMan, and there wasn't enough Bible in it. It wasn't deep enough for them. And I kind of laughed, and the guy was like, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Well, we didn't write it for you. Like, we wrote it for the 15 men you're going to get into it. The men on the fringes, the men that are out there that have no clue, that have no definition, that don't know their design, that don't know that every now and then we've got to pick up the sword and fight for something that's bigger than us, right? We wrote it for those men and for men like you to take them through it, for men like you to walk with them, right? And we're not interesting, we're not interested in feeding a bunch of fat cats, right? And I love so those who listening on Spotify can't see this, but our viewers can see it. I'm going to read it. Again, the card is so simple, so clear. You've got a message for dad on the cards. You got a message for sons on the card. And I want to read the message for sons because it just spoke to me. And it said, "Son, do you know why I'm giving you this sword? Because you've been called to something in life that is greater than yourself. Something you will need to, at times, risk your own safety and comfort for. To follow the truths we learn about in the Bible or the prompting of the Holy Spirit, and to act courageously in the face of fear. This sword represents my desire for us to be good men who lay down our lives for others like the Lord has laid down his life for us, with courage and conviction. I'm still trying to figure this out, but I'm excited to be on this adventure together. Love, Dad."
My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a message every son needs to hear. If you went to theworldneedsgoodmen.com only to get this card and share that message with your son, the world would be a better place. And to boot, you get this awesome sword that's basically indestructible, which is amazing. My kids are going to be so hyped when I get home today. But that, tell us how that, you hearing me read that, how does that message resonate with you?
Yeah, well, I started to tear up a little bit because I hadn't read it in a long time since I last wrote it. But yeah, I mean, that's the message that I hope that I can remember. And I think when I'm healthy and I feel good, it's easier to remember. Yeah. When I'm less healthy, just mentally, it becomes harder to hold on to. Yeah. But I'm not going to be healthy and perfect all the time. Yeah. And so if I'm able to model that for my boys, and I try to bring them in on the times that I'm having a hard time, more so than just the easy and good times. Yeah. But if I can remember that, I think it will help kind of, not that becoming stronger is like the objective, but I want to do everything that I can with the time that I have and the opportunities I'm given to try to like make good on that. Yeah. And I find that my personal bent is to tend to drift to like the analysis. It's like, oh, well, I'm not really sure what to do. Well, let me figure out what to do before I make a decision. And there have been times where I've been completely, unfortunately for extended periods of my life, completely locked up on some of that. And there were plenty of ramifications from that. Yeah. But yeah.
And sometimes, I just want to go back to that, man. Sometimes you just have to go, you have to fail, and you have to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so it looks like, you just said, forget everything else, I'm going forward, I'm taking the risk. Mm-hmm. What type of testimonies or responses have you gotten from dads or sons who have purchased these swords?
That's a great question. Yeah. I get a fair number of photos, of their boys with their dad with their boys. It's really I get some text messages around like, hey, I've gotten comments on this. It's not like a long-term, multi-month, multi-course thing, you know, and so there's not a lot of like input on like total life transformation or long journey, but there is a lot of like, yes, like I need this. I want my son to have this. And how that plays out over the course of that young man's life or the dad's life, I don't have a lot of eyesight into, but my hope is that there's, I think someone showed me, like, there was a series on, I don't know if it was Netflix or PBS, the Around the World in 80 Days series. And it's like, oh my gosh, I have never gotten a challenge like that, where someone comes to me and is like, I'll bet you can't make it around the world in 80 days, but I would love to have that.
Yeah.
And my hope is that, and what I think plays out, is that this is a little bit of that, is that, the challenge is put in front of you. The gap is opened that maybe you weren't aware of, that, hey, maybe there's something else I should be kind of like including in my compass as I'm orienting the direction of my life. And that hopefully that plays out over the months or years to come. I can tell you at home, we've broken lots of tree branches, lots of bamboo, had lots of bruised fingers and arms. It's not, hopefully it's not going to send a kid to the hospital, but like a real knife would. But
Right.
but it's I know for me, it's certainly been something that we go back to occasionally, in terms of like sword fighting, going on adventures.
I love that. Tell us, one of the main tenets of BetterMan has to do with courage.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, our first W is a real man, God's man, courageously follows God's word.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say the word courage, how does Austin think about and define courage? Sure. What does courage mean to you?
That's a great question. Well, I guess courage, to me, would be willingness to act in accordance to what you believe in the face of fear.
Come on.
And for a lot of my life, I was really afraid. And I think probably a year or two ago, I realized that, like, oh, maybe you can't really have a lot of courage unless you have that fear. There's plenty of people that I think they aren't naturally dispositioned to fear, and they go and do lots of amazing things and are able to make decisions in areas that other people are not. But for me, I think looking at one, it's probably the presence of fear, and that there needs to be something you're nervous about, and there needs to be something that you're concerned about losing, and something you might be scared of. And without that, it's kind of hard to have courage. You're just kind of like moving forward, doing things.
Yeah.
But so I think the first part would be some form of fear or risk. And then two would be the choice to move forward even in the face of that, either because you maybe forget some things that are true about life, or you remember them and you choose to move forward with them in your pocket. But I think that's probably how I would think about it.
Yeah, that's so. It's really good, and man, as I sit here and I know Dee has the same sentiment, and I'm talking with you, just want to encourage you. I think it was Richard Foster who said, the world is not in need of more successful or more intelligent men. The world is in need of deeper men. And bro, you really do seem like just a deep well. Even in the 20, 25 minutes we've gotten to spend with you. So one, thank you so much for coming and sharing some of that depth with us.
Of course.
And I think you're right. Courage is, it's not the absence of fear. It's moving forward in the face of fear. And I love what you said, that caveat of the fear of losing something you love. And man, you don't want to lose it. I wonder how many of us professing Christians love Jesus enough to move forward in the face of our fears. Years ago, I was doing an event, I was at Columbine High School in Colorado. It's the Columbine. This is years after that, and Columbine kind of became notorious for like the first really media school shooting, that sort of thing. And I just so happened to be there on the day of the anniversary. And I asked the principal of the school, I said, what's this like? He said, Chris, I hate it. We have to relive this every year. The media shows up, et cetera, and they just relive the story every year. But one of the stories came out of that was the girl who they basically put her on her knees, put a gun to the back of her head and said, deny Christ. And she didn't. This high school girl wouldn't do it. She loved Jesus so much that she was able to move forward in the face of that fear. And ultimately it's probably, it's not necessarily the reason why she lost her life, but in that moment she lost her life because of the evil that was surrounding her. I wonder how many of us listening today, we're talking about cards and we're talking about wooden swords, but I don't want people to miss what we're really talking about is courage, is loving something enough to be willing to lay down your life for it. And I don't know about y'all. Well, actually, I do know both of you well enough to know that you believe Jesus is worth every bit of that. And I hope our men watching and listening, I hope they hear that. Austin, thank you so much for coming on. Hey, if we wanted to point people towards what you're doing, what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, sure thing. So it'd be going to theworldneedsgoodmen.com. We have a one-page website, not a massive thing, but hopefully is clear enough to help people understand what my wife and I are trying to do with our boys, and if they would like to take part, certainly willing to get them a sword, an axe, a shield, a T-shirt, whatever.
That's awesome.
And hey, BetterMan fam, we're just going to ask you, support them.
Yeah.
Support them. The world needs good men. And I think you can be a good man by supporting Austin.
Yeah. And send us the pictures, man. Go get some swords and some shields, man, and go into the backyard and build forts and fight dragons and rescue damsels in distress. I mean, do it all. I'm going home today, and I'm gonna have a sword fight in the backyard. We might even break out a water hose. Who knows? It's a little warm. But check them out in the show notes. And Austin, thanks again for being with us.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.